Welcome to Purpose 360. I'm Carol Cohn, and today more than ever before, companies, brands, and their partners need to stand for something beyond the bottom line. I've created this program to provide insights and ideas to share with you so that you can apply them to your work the very next day. The goal here is to up-level your purpose and to benefit companies and society. So please join us. I'm very excited about this interview today with Balaji Ganapathy, who is Chief Social Responsibility Officer for Tata Consultancy Services. You may recall that we had Balaji on the show about a year ago when the pandemic, the months started taking place. And the question was, how can a company truly support its employees? Well, Tata Consultancy Services is one of those companies that has purpose right at the center, and they have incredible programs that truly embed purpose into their training, their culture, their operations. Well, during the pandemic, and we're going to have a fabulous conversation with Balaji today, what did TCS do really early on? And then what did they do in terms of amping up current programs and truly taking care of their employees when they immediately pivoted to a work from home environment? At the core of this conversation is a war for talent. And why must companies truly rethink and reevaluate and evolve their employee engagement, their training, even their customer service policies that will engage so many employees? Because prior to the pandemic, as Balaji said, there was a war on talent that truly existed. But now it will be something you've never seen before. So let's begin our conversation. Welcome back, Balaji.
Thank you, Carol. It's always a pleasure. It's a humbling experience to be talking to you. I mean, you've done so much for the social impact, social cause space. It's a pleasure to be back, and it's a pleasure to be a friend.
Yeah, I think the friendship is the best part. So thank you so much. And did you celebrate your 17th anniversary at TCS? It's about happening.
I mean, time flies so much, and especially the past year, has been so challenging. I think every milestone is something that I celebrate. And this is an organization that has given me an opportunity to build multiple careers within the last couple of decades. So looking forward to more years to come.
Absolutely. And they are so lucky to have you. So let me just do a little bit by the numbers so that people who don't know TCS, they will get a sense of the scope of the company. It is one of the divisions of the Tata Group, which I believe it's an over 150-year-old company, one of the most purpose at the center, oldest companies in the world. And Tata is headquartered in Mumbai, India. TCS was founded in 1968. It has $22 billion in revenues, and it is almost at 500,000 people. It has 488,000 employees, and I know that we're going to talk about the war for talent in a post-COVID world as part of our conversation. I love the fact that you employ over 146 nationalities, and that you have operations in 50 countries. And you also, congratulations, in the past year alone, you won over 30 awards, including being a Superbrand. And Superbrands, there are very few. There are 35 in this country. And that you are in the technology sector right up there with Google and Amazon. And so I don't know, just it's a little aside, but how did it feel to be named a super brand?
Oh, I think it's a testament to the efforts that our management team and our cross-functional teams have done, and the focus that we have had on our customers in creating value through digital technologies. I think that's what's showing up. I think we've been more vocal about what we do and how it benefits companies and society and people. And that has helped us elevate the brand equity considerably over the last few years.
And I think because you are a purpose at the center company, that being so large, and I think that, you always said to me that, you're a global information technology services company and that you are either the largest, like, you said on a good day, you beat IBM and you beat Accenture. Where are you right now today, size wise?
So we are still one of the most valuable technology companies in the world. I think it's either Accenture or us on any given day. But more importantly, I think we're a company that is founded on values and built on belief. Right, belief that innovation and collective knowledge can really create better futures for people and consumers and companies. And so, helping customers and governments and other entities that we work with on a growth and transformation journey is at the core of everything that we do. So it's humbling to be recognized with companies that are leading globally. But I think any organization that is creating value for their customers, value for their consumers, and for all stakeholders will have a leadership position in society today.
And so that gives us a great segue to the comment that you have coined, that purpose is the new technology. And I know when we discussed that in our previous podcast, that I have immediately put it in all my presentations. I give you all the credit for it. And now it's also on your LinkedIn page. And I would love you to share with our listeners, what does it mean that purpose is the new technology?
I think it is really critical to know that the era that we are in, right? There's a lot of, especially in the last couple of years, there's a lot being talked about purpose and being purpose centric, purpose driven. I think what we need to recognize that it is not a passing fad, right? It is not just a nice word coined and to be used to purpose wash and make yourself seem better and bigger than what you are. I think it is a shift in culture, in popular culture, because consumers are demanding that organizations pay more attention to their supply chain, whom they work with, whom they employ, whom they serve, and how they do that. At the same time, society in general is expecting companies to do much more than before and play a more active role in creating a more equitable society. Right? And companies themselves are going through a transformation where last time we spoke we were talking about how the half life of a company, a Fortune 500 company, has gone down from about 50 years in the 1950s to about 27 years now. If you need to be a company that is there for the long term, you need to constantly reinvent yourselves for creating value for your consumers. But what do you anchor yourself? You anchor yourself to purpose, right? So why purpose is the new tech is that in the last decade or so, every company wanted to be a tech company, right? Whether you are in hospitality, whether you are in travel, whether you are in banking or financial services, manufacturing, telecommunication, you don't want to be called as those domains or those business areas. The cool thing was to be a tech company, right? Quote unquote. And the cool thing today is to be a purpose driven company, quote unquote. And the value here is that you can create incredible value for all of your stakeholders if you truly live that nomenclature of being a purpose driven company. So that's what I believe. The purpose is the new tech is a statement that defines the era that we are in, where creating value for all your stakeholders, putting purpose at the core of what you do, and transforming your own business models to be inclusive, equitable, and create value for society is going to create incredible growth opportunities economically and socially for all. So I truly believe in that, and I really appreciate you, uh, taking this message to your audiences. You're very well respected, and it's really humbling for me to have that message carried by you to your listeners, your audience around the world?
People really, they go, whoa, they really, sit up and go, that's profound. So thank you for it. And I love giving you attribution all the time. So let's get into why I wanted you back today, because we've all gone through COVID and COVID is still around. And I just want to start by just saying that certainly what has happened in India in terms of COVID, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was the lead in the news. It was just horrible and devastating. And I just want to ask you, I know that the Tata Group has set aside over $200 million for recovery and responses and such. But how are you doing as a company and also as a country?
Thanks for the empathy. I think this whole the pandemic has brought to light the differences, especially the spatial differences, that exist in society today. And some of the challenges that we in the United States went through last year in a similar time frame is what is being reflected in countries like India and Brazil and a few other places around the world right now. On the one hand, we know more about how this disease is contracted, how it spreads, what it does to your body, how you can prevent it, certain drugs and medicines to reduce the effects of it, and vaccines. I mean, incredible. A year ago, when we were talking, we did not know that all of this was going to be there. So we made incredible progress. But at the same time, like I said, the spatial disparities are huge. We are in a privileged position in the United States where more than half of the population have been vaccinated. And we are talking about normalcy and return to how it was pre-COVID. But most of the world, especially the global south, is still struggling with the effect of the disease. So India and what happened in the last couple of months is, it's a wake-up call for the rest of the world. Fortunately, the strains that are being seen in India and some other parts of the world are being still addressed through the existing vaccines. But imagine a scenario where these strains start to break through the immunity that is being built through the vaccines, and what kind of a world that we will be living in, right? So it's so fragile. So let me put it in context. The last year waves that happened around the world, especially in India, when swift action was taken by leaders across the world, I think we were able to slow down the spread of the disease. But with a lot of information that has come in and the impact that shutdowns and restrictions have had on the economy, people are taking different kind of decisions right now, right? So the spread of the disease happened so quickly, and the difference is that last year a lot of the migrant population in India were affected because they were mobile and they had to go back home, where in their villages and where they belong, and that contributed to the spread of the disease. Whereas this time it is agnostic of race, religion, where you are located, your economic status. It is spreading all around India. And so while the news has started to subside in terms of number of cases, I can tell you from people who are in our teams, in our families, in communities in India, the situation remains grim. It is a challenging situation because unless we get to a place where vaccination happens in large scale, you're going to see the effect of the disease continue and the devastation continue. So, from a Tata Group perspective, of course, last year when we had made this pledge of 200 million, we also put together a cross functional team across group companies because each of the companies in different sectors have their strengths, right? We have strength in manufacturing, in logistics, in distribution, in procurement, in technology, in so many different areas. And the work that we did between then and this in this last 1 year has formed the foundation of our response right now. We put up COVID hospitals, we put up medical facilities, fully equipped with hospital beds and ventilators and medical equipment. We increased capacity of doctors, medical professionals as well, and now communication converting into vaccination drives. I'd love to talk about the role of that in helping us get back to more normalcy. But it is still a tough time, and I want our listeners to recognize that it is not equitable, right? Many parts of the world are still suffering, and what we can do is to bring attention to this. And we live in a global world. Whatever is happening in one part of the world is going to affect us one way or the other. So, how do we create more vaccine equity? How do we create more equity and access to these facilities? Is an important conversation we need to have.
And we will have that conversation in a moment. We'll also put in our show notes that where any of our listeners can make contributions. I mean, I know that I did make contributions to the recovery in India and shared it on social, and I got some interesting feedback from people who wanted to also do that.
Okay.
Let's shift now. You're welcome. I mean, it's we are a global humanity, and we have to express it all the time. Let's talk about what did TCS learn during the first half of COVID? Last six, maybe because, in the beginning it was like, maybe the beginning. And then also you started getting into some, dare I say, routine, but how many of your people actually you shifted because, to work from home? And I know you said that in a flash, all can change. And I think that because you are a technology company, you really change fast. So what did you learn? What did you do? What did you learn?
I think the strength and resilience of our people, of our teams, was really came through when the need of the hour was high. What did we learn? I think in the initial few weeks of the pandemic, especially in March and April, we learned that we needed to quickly pivot while safety and health and well being of our own employees was important to focus on, and we did that. We also needed to ensure that continuity of services that were performed by our customers was also important to address. So we addressed that and we created a secure, borderless workplace model where we were quickly able to pivot about 97% of our population to work remotely and without any major incidents, without any challenges, continue to support our customers in that model, right? And that model largely remains intact even now as we navigate through the highs and the lows in terms of each country going through reopening cycles and back to office kind of setup. A few things that we were able to do early on that has helped us in this journey and has formed great learnings is that initially itself we announced a slew of talent practices to do with paid quarantine leave, a support team that would look at well-being of employees when they needed to reach out, and then governance committees and monitoring committees where leaders across the organization could do stand-up calls and quickly address issues as they were coming up or proactively address areas that we needed to strengthen. So all that contributed to a point where we were able to continue our growth, continue serving customers while taking care of our employees and supporting the community.
And what was the response from customers when they saw the speed at which you responded?
Incredible response. I mean, very important services, citizen services and other services in the countries could have been disrupted. But thanks to the work done by our teams and others in this kind of space, we were able to continue providing that support. So the customer feedback has been tremendous. Employee feedback has also been very positive. See, Carol, you asked me the lessons, right? One of the things in putting these together, now in hindsight, you will think that, okay, every organization is doing this today, right? But to have the foresight to be able to do it early on and focus on mental health. Mental health was an area that in April or May of last year, we started doing sessions to engage our employees and in an in-person environment, a lot of the team camaraderie, the kind of the fun and the team building that happens in person, how do you replicate it virtually while at the same time helping people address mental challenges and issues that they are facing, because all of a sudden you're confined to a certain space, you have to take care of your families, you have to take care of people who are not in your location but you are responsible for. so much of pressure being put on people. So the focus on mental health and TCS Cares, which is a program that we run within the company, that was a huge lesson that was learned in the last year, and that is paying us a lot of rich dividends. Our attrition rate in the last year was the lowest ever in history. 7.2% is our attrition rate. So, about 97% of our employees 93% of our employees chose to remain with us. So, even during this challenging time, when companies are starting to look for and hiring talent in huge numbers.
I think it's important to note, and I'd love you to say it again, pre-COVID, that your retention rate was probably, if not the highest, one of the 5 highest in the world. And can you give our listeners the numbers? It's like, was it 87 to 89%? I mean, they're really high.
That is correct. Around 10 to 11% attrition was there, and it was industry leading and benchmark. And now in the past year, it's dropped down to 7.2%. So highest retention rate ever. And incredibly, during this time, we also had 43 million hours of learning that our employees were able to go through during this past year. So that is another lesson we learned, that if you have a model where anytime, anywhere learning is accessible to your employees, especially during a time when commute times are cut and people have more time on hand to invest in themselves, the opportunities are there, and you're providing as a company the resources, people take it up in huge numbers.
That's such an important point. That time that they were using to advance themselves.
And that is helping them advance in their career too. So we ran a program, and it is an ongoing one called Elevate, where we help link learning to careers. So anyone who is taking on additional professional development opportunities and gaining new skills, new certifications, what we are doing is we have transformed into a talent cloud model, where earlier a lot of the opportunities was location based, right? Of course, as a global organization with presence in 46 countries around the world, we do have global opportunities. But in many cases, within those countries, within those environments, the roles were limited to a certain location. What has happened in the past year is a talent cloud model where wherever opportunities opened up to wherever you are. So that has also excited a lot of our workforce even more, especially women and others who may find it challenging to move from one place to another to take on new roles or higher roles, right? So it is creating more equity. At the same time, it is creating more access, democratizing more access to opportunities within the company.
We're going to take a pause for a moment because this is a great conversation, and we're going to go to our In the Know section. One of my favorite companies, as you know, for data is Just Capital. And Just Capital has their Just 100 rankings that they do with Forbes. But based on the challenges to COVID and in a new normal world, they recently released a list of the top 100 U.S. companies supporting healthy communities and families. Compared with other companies in the Russell 1000, the top performers, they had 73% fewer controversies related to the health and environmental impacts of their products and services. Less time with lawyers, less time with law firms. That's a great result. They also emitted 25% less in their Scope 1 and 2 emissions. That makes sense. A lot of people weren't traveling and such, and people were working from home, so the companies weren't having these emissions. They were good citizens in terms of what they were doing with their employees. 3.3 times more likely to provide additional paid sick leave to their employees. They were 2.5 times more likely to provide a wage increase. But here was the ultimate financial payoff. They outperformed the Russell 1000 benchmark by 4.6% over the trailing year. So I suggest that you go to Just Capital, click on news and their most recent reports. And it's a fascinating read. And by the way, you're probably saying, okay, Carol, who were in the top few? Well, number one was NVIDIA Corp. Number two, Microsoft. And Microsoft has been right at the top of the Just 100 for years. BOA, Bank of America, number three. Salesforce.com, always at the cutting edge, number four. Intel 5, JP Morgan Chase and Company 6, Synchrony Financial 7, Workday, interestingly, a new one, coming in at 8, Cap One Financial 9, Apple 10, ATT 11, etc., etc. It's a great list, great insights. Share it with your colleagues. Now back to our conversation with Balaji. So let's talk about what individuals at your level are thinking about now and planning, which is return to the office. Some people are calling it return to work, which is we're hearing a lot of our clients saying September is really kind of the time we're planning about welcoming people back and such. But we really wanted to talk with you about what are your plans? Because you had so many people that instantly transitioned, 97% you said, to at home. And so what you can share with us, what are your plans? What are the challenges? What are you planning to support your employees with as they perhaps make a transition to a hybrid, or even just saying, hey, I'm not going to be with my kids now and my pets?
It is a very interesting time because, I think we need to really live the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion that all of us in companies and in leadership positions are touting, especially in the past year, right? And recognize that a return to office environment is probably not equitable to all. Last time we spoke, we touched upon the point that more women have left the workforce in the first few months of COVID than in the past a couple of years prior to COVID, right? So, and especially in the US, if you see the return to take on new jobs and the employment opportunities, there is still that gap that exists. Globally, if you look at our operations and where we are and our plan, last year itself, we had articulated a 25 by 25 vision, which is that by 2025, only 25% of the population of TCS employees need to be working in an actual workplace, in an office. And only 25% of the time does someone need to work in an office environment. Even with that, our goal is to get 100% productivity from each employee. So what that helped early on is set a clear path in terms of what we are going to do as an organization and address people's concerns in terms of when they feel it is safe and responsible to come back to work. Of course, we are monitoring the situation every day, every week. And as countries are reopening and providing more opportunities for people to come to an office environment, we are starting to open up our facilities. But we have a tool called the Intelligent Urban Exchange, which we use in terms of looking at data and analytics and insights to guide our thinking. So that tool also helps us in risk assessment in terms of, especially now with vaccination, what kind of vaccination status exists within the population, where do people reside versus where they are going to come to work, what is the prevalence of COVID and other cases in the region, what are the other basic health parameters that are needed to make the workplace safe. And you have to give confidence and trust to your employees that if they come back, they're not put in harm's way. So I think we'll take it one step at a time and using these parameters to guide us. And it is going to be a progressive effort. You're not going to get 100% of your workforce back in a short period of time. And I don't know if it if the new model of work requires that to happen. So hybrid will be certainly the future. We will, as the situation improves and as restrictions start to go down, we will explore how to bring employees back to work in an office environment, because it's a misnomer to say come back to work, right? People have been slogging and passionately and committedly working over the past year. So the equity lens is important to look at here. But I do believe that in the next 1 year, a lot of lessons will be learned by companies like ours and others, like the Microsofts and the Apples and others who are adopting a hybrid model, and lessons will be learned. One of the lessons and that we have learned that we are applying now, Carol, which you may find interesting, is that earlier people used to use office as the basis for team building and daily activities and interactions. Now we have clearly proven that that can happen in a remote environment. How do you use offices as more of innovation hubs, right? So earlier we used to do offsites outside the work and workplace, but you can convert your workplace to innovation hubs where you can do those offsites and those innovation discussions in person, and the rest of the day-to-day work can happen remotely. So that is the model that we are gravitating towards, and seeing good signs of how we are able to support our employees while creating great value for our customers. So that's where we are going.
So, how much of the employee input are you getting to look at the new design of whether it's an innovation hub or the 25 by 25 or other new programs?
That's a very good question. I think the employee, we call it Pulse, which is the employee survey that we do internally, both on satisfaction and engagement. We had some of the highest scores that we have ever had historically in the past year. And one of the reason is that there is more avenues for employees to connect and share what they are going through, what they're expecting, how the company is responding to it. And I think that mode of communication and the ability to use their feedback to quickly pivot and change direction in terms of policy, in terms of communication, in terms of practices, and access to services and facilities, all of that is at the core of how we are dealing with this, right? So we are seeing very positive feedback from them, and where we are seeing concerns, we are taking measured steps to ensure that, especially as I said, right, vaccination status is an important factor for people to feel confident, not just safety measures and ensuring that you have a clean, sterile workplace.
I want to connect some dots here. You talked about doing early mental health. You've talked about a concern about women because they are the traditional caregivers, whether it's children, pets, parents, or such. And you've talked about listening. How are these coming together? It seems like you're ahead of the curve. And so, how are these coming together? You're great listeners. It seems like you're more responsive to your employees even before the return to the office.
We have to be. I think we owe it to them. I mean, take my own personal situation. I have two kids at home, and my own role, since I used to travel about 60-70% of the time, and since I'm more at home in the past year, my role as a caregiver has changed. But that does not mean that, if you talk about return to a workplace, what impact does it do to our own family? And think about school, especially for younger kids, it's still not clear whether in person or hybrid or blended or what do they call team A, team B models will happen, right? So, I think as a leader, I have developed more empathy for what people go through my own experiences. And I think in the larger organization also, that empathy has translated to a more employee driven view of how we should evolve our practices, right? So the mental health focus came from the demand from our employees or from the challenges that they were facing, what they were saying, and what we were listening and hearing from them. and the focus on women and others whose roles are even more challenging now also has come from that background. So I think organizations need to pay attention to this, and any call to action to say that okay, let's get back 100% to office is myopic, right? You need to widen your lens, especially in today's day and age when you call yourself as a diversity champion or equity champion. Look at it from the lens of those who are not in your shoes, right? Those whom you don't interact with or empathize with on a daily basis. You have to put yourself in those shoes, understand, and that's where listening plays a key role. Unless you listen, how will you know how what they are going through and how you can address that?
So, are you doing anything additive in listening? For example, the individuals who decide to come back physically to the office, will there be either taking current programs and doing more of them or anything new?
A complete transformation of programs, Carol. I think all of our talent practices, some of which I spoke about, Elevate, which is linking learning to careers, or Talent Cloud, which is our internal marketplace where people can move into new positions and opportunities to grow in their career. Or if you look at, even our engagement practices, how managers are having interactions with their teams, how business unit leaders are able to engage with their whole organization, and how executives are able to convey messages and communicate to the entire TCS. I mean, all of that is transformed over the past year. And when we come back to a work environment where it is hybrid, I think we need to be even more sensitive to the fact that we are inclusive, right? It does not mean that who is coming into the office gets something more than others or is in a better place position. But this is easier said than done. I think as HR practitioners, as leaders, we will all have a journey of learning where we will realize, some of the inherent biases that every organization has, and especially in this kind of a context. But I think we will also push the envelope much further than ever before in these sort of talent practices.
And it's interesting that you mentioned inclusive, because now with a hybrid office, inclusive has another definition. And I'm curious about how your HR team integrates with your team and other teams, because you just seem so far ahead in terms of being strategic.
We are all part of the same group. See, actually, CSR sits within the HR space, given that our large employee pool and our talent focus drives a lot of our community initiatives as well, right? So it is something which is very symbiotic because I mean, if you really look at the story of TCS and the boom of opportunities in the services sector around the world, it is all about democratizing opportunity to every individual to participate in the digital economy, right? And last time we spoke about our vision for CSR is that, right, to connect people to opportunity in the digital economy, especially with the focus on women, marginalized groups, and youth. So it is very symbiotic. It is, and I truly value that because not only do we have authentic partnerships with business leaders and even customers, internally the alignment is so well that all of the practices, talent practices that we have, the strengths that we are able to apply those strengths to address community related issues, because all of the challenges that we were talking about in the past 30 minutes or so apply even more to communities and especially marginalized people in community, right? So here in America, we are seeing black and brown and Asians having more disparities in the past year than others, right? And there is a rising consciousness and voice on how to address it. But it is people, it is companies, it is leaders who have to step up and do that. So that is our role. That is today's leadership role is about walking the talk in terms of inclusion and converting your statements to actions internally.
Absolutely. During the pandemic, Because, for our listeners, again, one of the things, a practice that just blew me away for TCS is that when a new recruit comes in during their orientation, which is 2-3 months, their first client is a not-for-profit in the community. And I never forget that story. I always tell it and people go, whoa, they really, really walk the talk. Oh, so during the pandemic, when people could not go out and physically volunteer or help with digital transition of a not-for-profit or such, what did you do to keep up that connection?
All of our programs, we moved to a digital model in the first few weeks of the pandemic, whether it is serving K-12 students or in the US or educators across the world or marginalized youth in India or villagers in rural parts of the world, we were able to shift to a digital model. And what we realized is that, again, the democratization of who could be a volunteer and who could support these initiatives. Earlier, if you were located in a particular location, like for example, if you are in New Jersey and you're supporting the food bank in Hillside, you have probably about 500 to 1,000 people living in this area within TCS who can support that. Now, if we are able to do remotely, for example, what we did with American Red Cross to help them with the missing maps. Missing maps is basically, I'm giving you as an example, a project where people can remotely come together and identify places that are missing on the map so that caregivers and others who are responding to disasters have an accurate depiction of what to expect on the ground. Now, earlier you were doing it in person or in a small group. We were able to shift it to a model where anybody within TCS could participate, right? So it is challenges like this that we are taking on now to saying that if the location is not a constraint, if anybody can volunteer from anywhere, what are the large problems in society that require human capital support that we can address and solve once and for all? But of course, the core is that our own programs, whether it is Go IT for students or Ignite My Future for educators or Bridge IT for rural entrepreneurs or youth employment program for youth. I mean, these are programs that are now being powered by our employees even more than ever before.
What kind of response did you get from employees where all of a sudden, they probably thought, oh, well, we're never going to get to do this. And all of a sudden you open the aperture even further.
Very, very positive feedback. I mean, a lot of people, and you would have felt this, I felt it at many times in the last year, a sense of helplessness that, you want to serve, you want to support, but you may not be in a place physically to be able to do it, right? And channeling that energy into something positive where you are able to make an impact. I think that sense of purpose, that sense of being supportive and useful to somebody else that sense is something that we wanted to bring to all of our employees, and that's what we're hearing from people. In fact, we doubled the number of beneficiaries that we serve in this COVID time. Around 800,000 the year before and 1.8 million in the past year during COVID. We had close to 800,000 volunteering hours in the past year. So these are, I'm quoting as numbers because it demonstrates the human spirit, the resilience of the human spirit, and what people wanted to do during this time to serve. So that gives me a lot of hope.
That's extraordinary. 800,000 hours and 1.8 million served. And I'm assuming now that you've created that thirst to do more, that you're going to do more, that you're not going to take it away. Correct?
Absolutely. Democratizing more opportunities, creating more modular opportunities. It gives us hope that even in these constraints, even in this challenging environment, this is what people are able to do if we offer them the opportunity. We will do more. We will do more in the coming years. And that's where when I say purpose is the new tech, I mean, if every organization can activate their employees to be agents of change, not just in any causes, but causes that are aligned to your strength as an organization, you can create incredible change in society.
We'll have to bottle that just on its own in terms of volunteerism during COVID. I want to talk about vaccine equity. And at first it was testing equity, and now there's vaccine equity.
This is a challenging one. And so, what we are addressing head on is that access to vaccine is the first problem that we are solving before asking about vaccination status, right? So, we have set up COVID centers for employees across the world, and especially in places like India where access, vaccine equity is a big challenge. We are taking the lead in procurement and distribution and administration of vaccine to our employees. In fact, we are going through a drive as we speak where 500,000 people are going to be vaccinated in India, both employees as well as their families and extended families and dependents are going to be vaccinated through our efforts. So, what we can do to create more vaccine equity for our own employees and their families is the first step that we are taking. Because before we ask the question on whether you're vaccinated, then whether it is safe for you to work in a close environment with others, we have to take the responsibility of providing them the opportunity to do that. So our goal is to give everybody access to communication around vaccines, then followed up with actual access to vaccines, and then based on the COVID situation and case count and what happens in that particular country or location, we will be flexible. But ideally, we would like everyone to get vaccinated.
If a company is not TCS, if they haven't really gone through the purpose transformation, or they didn't start out that way, but they want to do well by their employees and they're inviting people back to the office. Can you just say, these are the three things you really should be thinking about before your employees come to the office? And then here's like the three things that you should do in the first few days or month that they come back.
I think engagement and communication is the first step that you should do even before thinking about coming back or bringing people back, right? Engagement with them to understand their current situation, holding them and listening to them in terms of who's able to, who's not, what their current circumstances are. That help you prepare, because then the second step is planning for what the workplace will look like and who is going to come. You will have a better sense of the capacity. You will know which team, what kind of mix is going to be there in person. And then, preparing the workplace to be safe and hospitable, especially, if there are restrictions in terms of number of feet that you need to have separation between cubicles or office spaces, and you have to reconfigure offices or, change your workplace based on that. So these are steps you can take pre. And then once people come back, we spoke about inclusion, right? Really important to understand who is in there and who is not, and ensuring that there is no disparity that is created as a result of that. And for those who are in person, how can you provide more services and resources, like, for example, access to food, access to someone to talk to if they have questions, and things like that at the workplace, so that you're minimizing the chance of them having any health challenges.
We've talked to some experts, and they say that in the first few weeks, just create opportunities for people to talk about their experience during COVID. And I wanted to know if that's important, and then how maybe you're doing that.
That's so important. So when I said trust-based communication and person-based interaction, some of the most popular internal, we have one TCS channel where these discussions are happening every other week. And one of the most popular ones are stories of survivors who have gone through COVID, what they experienced and how they overcame it. And so I think a lot of people have apprehensions, and they're looking for shared experiences, right? To be having that sense of community where they recognize that they're not alone. Others have gone through similar things or going through similar things, and that sense of deep empathy comes from that. So I think listening and understanding, and I didn't mention this as from a return to office perspective, because you should be doing this even now, right? As an organization, you should be doing this already, where you have avenues where people can speak out, they can talk about it, others can ask questions, And that is how you will engender that sense of community and trust based communication. So important.
I hate to cut this off because you and I have great conversations, but let's talk about. I really just want to, as we're beginning to close it down. What are your predictions or insights for the employee employer relationship going forward, like in the next 6 months to a year?
I think there's a massive transformation in what is in the HRs as a space known as social contracts or psychological contracts, right? Where earlier those contracts between employers and employees, a lot of it is based on manager-employee relationships, but also the workplace relationship because your peers and your professional network and that sense of a larger community comes from that. This face a huge transformation in the next 6 to 12 months. It's already going through a transformation, right? So the practices, it's not only the talent practices that you have to transform, you have to ask yourself the fundamental question: how does that psychological contract, that social contract, what is that for the post COVID or the the new way of work, right? And I believe that the talent clouds that we spoke about, the democratization of access of opportunities, more inclusion for those who are underserved and marginalized, all of this will form a huge basis for those new psychological contracts. But let us come back to why we are here and why we are discussing. I think purpose will be a huge lever, huge enabler for the employee employer relationships in the future. Because if you're working in a hybrid model and you don't have all the tchotchkes and the great brands and things that you offer employees when they come into the world of work, the office, what is going to keep them with you? That sense of purpose, of doing something together that's greater than the sum of their individual parts, something that is benefiting society at large. That is going to be the driver. And companies that recognize that, leaders that recognize that, are going to really set themselves up for success and create positive change in that process.
And I love that you said that, and we got to it at the end versus the beginning. And I might put it in the introduction, but you made a comment that there was a war on talent prior to COVID. Now it will be something you've never seen before. And I think that for those listening who are, I don't know about this purpose thing, whatever, that you can get really tangible. You look at your retention rates, your attrition rates, but the democratization of people are now working at home and they can go work for anybody. Purpose would absolutely the glue to keep people, as long as it's executed the way you execute it. So I wonder if we want to amplify about this war for talent, because I've seen it in a lot of our clients. We've got people just going all sorts of different places.
It is real, right? And it is, without saying right and wrong, I think organizations that organically grow talent by investing in their own employees are not experiencing a real war for talent, as opposed to those who have to compete to buy talent in the marketplace, right? So already there are proven models of how we can do that. But even in this current situation where anybody can go work for anyone from anywhere, I think that the whole anchored in purpose, living your values, because anybody can walk out on you on any given day, right? So what is tethering them to you as a company is that sense of purpose. And I think culture and how you are cultivating culture, if you do it authentically, if you're paying attention, you don't have to be the best and the most perfect way of doing things. You just need to authentically listen to, engage, and do what is the right thing, and you will learn. You will learn on the way. I think the war for talent will be a war for those who do not invest in their employees. If you invest in your own employees, if you give the opportunity for people to grow from within, it is going to be those employees will bring others. They will tell them about what great a workplace it is, how fulfilling it is, what are the opportunities they're getting, and that attracts people, and then that retains people because people want to work with people whom they like and respect. And so that's the positive change, that positive virtuous cycle that we are fortunate to be part of, thanks to the leadership and the vision that our leaders have had over the years.
So COVID does have some silver linings in it, in terms of the 800,000 hours, the 1.8 million organizations you could serve, the continuation of your listening, the elevate in, the training. It's because you were very purposeful at the center and investing in employees before COVID. So I'm going to give the mic to you for the last comments, Balaji, because you have such wisdom. So how would you like to end this conversation? And we'll have more in the future for sure.
I really appreciate the time. And two things I want to end with. All of this is possible because there are still people on the front lines fighting this disease, helping all of us stay safe and healthy. So I want to note that whatever we have been able to accomplish as individuals, as companies, as teams, is thanks to their efforts, right? The final thing is that I believe that we are going to go through what is a catapult effect, right?
Catapult effect, okay?
Where we have been pulled back to leap forward. And in being pulled back, if you have put the right kind of foundation in place, if you have tested your hypothesis of what is right and wrong, how you can be more purpose driven, how you can be more inclusive, and really sharpened all of your tools in your repertoire, I think the effect that you're going to have is you're going to catapult into the future at such a fast pace of growth and opportunities for yourself and your employees and your customers, that it is going to be an incredible one. Same for society. I believe that you asked me the question of will you continue to have this sort of scale and impact. We firmly believe that it will be even greater depth and reach of impact that we're going to have, because the catapult effect is taking effect. As things reopen, as we are able to resume things the way that it's a new way of doing things. I also want to acknowledge that when you resume, it doesn't mean that we go back to the old ways of doing things. It is plus plus, right? What we were doing now plus what we were able to do when we did not have these restrictions. So catapult effect is going to take effect for those who are prepared for it.
So in our last conversation, you dropped this wonderful line, purpose is the new technology. Now you're talking about the catapult effect. So I think that is something that we want to leave with our listeners and watch it over the next months. We'll have you back probably in 6 months or so to see how the catapult effect is working out. I do know in some of my reading that you had a fast hiring amount during COVID, didn't you? You added thousands. How many did you add of employees?
We had close to more than 50,000 during this time. We honored every offer that is out in the market, and both at the entry level and experience higher level. So we have seen the same pace of growth with higher retention during this time.
So I want to thank you, Balaji Ganapathy. You are just such a fountain of wisdom with such humility and empathy. And we love TCS even more after this conversation. And by the way, I guess some of our runners are asking me, will the marathon be in person this fall?
That's the plan. What the New York Road Runners have decided is to run it in person. The numbers may be lesser than previous years, but that is the goal. And touchwood, hoping to see all the runners in action come November.
There you go. So for those of you who don't know the TCS, you've been the sponsor of the New York Marathon for how many years now?
It's the 6th year. So TCS New York City Marathon is one of our flagship running events around the world. We sponsor others, including Chicago, Boston, London, Singapore, many others around the world.
And you're the technology partner too in those. And so you're constantly just helping people in so many ways. So Balaji Ganapathy, thank you so much for coming back on our show. This has been a fabulous conversation. We now know about the catapult effect. In addition to purpose is the new technology. And I trust that our listeners are going to just gobble up this incredible wisdom about return to work, to be inclusive, to be fair, to provide opportunities, lots of learning and education and such. And you too can have these extraordinary results that TCS has. In closing, I hope that you will absolutely look at what is the power of your purpose. And if you like our shows, please go to your favorite podcast location and give us a review. We always love those 5-star reviews. If you think we need a little bit of enhancement, give us a 4. But we're hearing great feedback from our listeners, and we want more and more people to listen to this show. It is packed with advice of how to truly discover and embed your purpose in your organization for both increased business impacts and societal impacts as well. We'd also like you to suggest guests. We are now on a tear we have this list of the unreachables, and it's people like, I want to get Richard Branson on the show. I want to get Paul Pullman. I might have a way to get Paul Pullman. Mark Benioff, Mary Barra. Love to get CEOs on the show, and or others. You might know some B Corps that you say, yeah, get those B Corps on your show, Carol. Send us any suggestions, and if you actually have an in with that high-level person, so much the better. So again, what is the power of your purpose? And we hope you join us for our next show soon. So thank you, Balaji.
Thank you, Karan. Such a pleasure.